Every instant of sadness uncovers something beautiful. Every moment of fear teaches you to be a little braver. Every broken heart opens the door to a new connection. Instead of doubting yourself, feeling inadequate in life's darkest moments, know that you need what you are going through. You are uncovering the little victories hidden in plain view. So when the world feels like too much and your patience is thin, be stronger than that voice in your head begging you to think small. Stand on every experience, the good and the bad. Let it elevate you to a beautiful tomorrow. If there's time, then there's time to turn things around. If there is a tomorrow, then there is hope today. The only have-to-be's in life are the ones we prop up and adhere to. And how interesting that oftentimes we don't even realize we're the ones holding them up. There's a simple question that I like to ask as the sun comes up and the coffee brews. Am I living today like it's an obligation?
Most people think communication is about what you say, but here's the brutal truth: it's not. The words that come out of your mouth represent less than 10% of your actual influence. The other 90% is psychology strategy and understanding how the human brain processes information. This is why some people can walk into any room, command respect, and get exactly what they want, while others struggle to be taken seriously no matter how smart they are or how hard they work. You've probably noticed this phenomenon yourself. You know someone who isn't the smartest person in the room, but somehow everyone listens to them. They get promoted faster, close bigger deals, and seem to effortlessly influence others. Meanwhile, brilliant people with amazing ideas get ignored, overlooked, and underestimated. The difference isn't intelligence or luck, it's communication mastery. Here's what most people don't understand about powerful communication. It's not a talent you're born with, it's a skill you can learn. Every element of influential speaking, from the way you enter a conversation to how you structure your thoughts, to the psychological triggers you activate, can be systematically developed. The most persuasive speakers in the world, CEOs who command billion-dollar companies, negotiators who close impossible deals. This audiobook will teach you those principles. You'll learn how to read any room within seconds, how to structure your thoughts so people hang on every word, how to use strategic silence to create authority, how to handle disagreement without losing respect, and how to build the kind of magnetic presence that makes people want to listen to you. By the time you finish, you won't just speak differently, you'll think differently about every interaction you have. But here's the catch: this only works if you apply it. These aren't theoretical concepts to think about. These are practical strategies to use immediately. Every technique I share has been proven in real-world situations, from boardrooms to first dates, from job interviews to family dinners. The psychology of communication is universal, and once you understand it, you'll never struggle to be heard, respected, or influential again. Chapter 1. The fatal communication mistakes that kill your influence before you even speak. Most people sabotage their influence before they even open their mouth. They walk into conversations already defeated because they've made fundamental mistakes that signal weakness, insecurity, and low status to everyone around them. These mistakes are so common that 95% of people make them without even realizing it. And they're destroying their ability to be taken seriously. The first fatal mistake is reactive communication. Most people wait for others to start conversations, set the tone, and determine the direction of the discussion. They respond instead of leading, they follow instead of guiding, and they let other people control the frame of every interaction. This immediately positions them as followers, not leaders. When you're constantly reacting, you're giving away your power and training others to see you as someone who waits for permission rather than someone who takes charge. Reactive communicators use phrases like, "I think maybe you're probably right," and "I'm not sure, but." They ask permission to speak, they apologize for having opinions, and they constantly seek validation from others. This creates a psychological dynamic where people unconsciously categorize them as less important, less confident, and less worthy of serious attention. The human brain is wireless in respect to certainty and authority, and reactive communication signals the opposite. The second fatal mistake is information dumping. Most people think that more information equals more persuasion, so they overwhelm others with facts, details, statistics, and explanations. They believe that if they just provide enough evidence, people will naturally agree with them. This is completely backwards. The human brain doesn't process information logically. It processes it emotionally first, then finds logical reasons to support those emotions. When you dump information on people, you're actually making it harder for them to understand and agree with you. You're creating cognitive overload, which triggers mental resistance. Instead of being persuaded, people become overwhelmed, confused, and mentally exhausted. They stop listening not because your information is wrong, but because their brain can't process it effectively. Information dumping also signals that you don't understand your audience's needs, priorities, or attention span. The third fatal mistake is emotional leakage. This happens when your internal emotional state unconsciously affects your communication. If you're nervous, anxious, insecure, or desperate, these emotions leak out through your voice tone, body language, and word choice, even when you're trying to hide them. People can sense emotional leakage immediately, and it destroys your credibility. Emotional leakage shows up in subtle ways. Your voice might get slightly higher when you're nervous. You might speak faster when you're anxious. You might use more filler words when you're uncertain. You might lean forward too much when you're desperate for approval. These micro signals communicate more than your actual words, and they tell people that you're not in control of yourself. If you can't control your own emotions, how can you be trusted with important decisions or responsibilities? The fourth fatal mistake is mirror communication. This is when you unconsciously copy the communication style, energy level, and opinions of whoever you're talking to. Mirror communicators become chameleons, constantly adjusting their personality to match their environment. They think this makes them more likable, but it actually makes them forgettable and untrustworthy. When you mirror others, you lose your unique voice and perspective. People can sense that you're not being authentic, and they stop taking you seriously. Mirror communication also prevents you from adding real value to conversations because you're just echoing what others have already said. Instead of being seen as agreeable, you're seen as weak, indecisive, and lacking in personal conviction. The fifth fatal mistake is defensive communication. This happens when you interpret neutral questions or comments as personal attacks and respond defensively. Defensive communicators are constantly explaining themselves, justifying their actions, and protecting their ego. They turn normal conversations into battles and exhaust people with their need to be right. Defensive communication creates a negative spiral. When you get defensive, others become more aggressive, which makes you even more defensive. This pattern destroys relationships, erodes trust, and makes people avoid communicating with you altogether. It also signals that you're insecure about your competence or authority, which undermines your influence.
If you don't understand the rules of power, you will certainly lose.
This is when your primary goal in every conversation is to be liked rather than to be respected or effective. Approval seekers constantly monitor other people's reactions and adjust their message based on what they think others want to hear. They avoid disagreement, sacrifice their opinions, and prioritize harmony over truth. Approval-seeking communication might seem nice, but it's actually manipulative and weak. When people sense that you're more concerned with being liked than being honest, they lose respect for you. They also stop trusting your opinions because they know you'll tell them what they want to hear rather than what they need to hear. This makes you irrelevant in important conversations and decisions. The seventh fatal mistake is unconscious communication. Most people have never studied how communication actually works, so they wing it and hope for the best. They don't understand how their tone affects perception, how their word choice creates meaning, or how their body language influences outcomes. This is like trying to perform surgery without understanding anatomy. You might get lucky, but you'd probably cause damage. Unconscious communicators repeat the same mistakes over and over because they don't know what they're doing wrong. They blame others for misunderstanding them, instead of taking responsibility for unclear communication. They get frustrated when people don't respond the way they want, but they never examine their own role in creating those outcomes. These 7 fatal mistakes are epidemic in modern society, and they're the reason why most people struggle with influence, authority, and respect. The good news is that once you become aware of these patterns, you can start changing them immediately. Every conversation becomes an opportunity to practice conscious, strategic communication that builds your influence instead of destroying it. Chapter 2. The Neuroscience of First Impressions, Why People Decide About You in 3 Seconds. Your brain makes snap judgments about other people in less than 3 seconds. And those judgments are incredibly difficult to change. This isn't a flaw in human psychology, it's a survival mechanism that evolved over millions of years to help us quickly identify threats, allies, and opportunities. Understanding how these first impressions work gives you enormous power because you can consciously influence them instead of leaving them to chance. The human brain processes first impressions through multiple channels simultaneously. Your appearance, posture, facial expressions, voice, tone, energy level, and initial words all get processed instantly and unconsciously. Within 3 seconds, people have already decided whether you're competent, confident, trustworthy, high status, or low status, and these decisions shape every subsequent interaction you have with them. This happens because of something called thin slice judgments. The brain takes a tiny slice of information and uses it to make broad predictions about your character, abilities, and intentions. These predictions are remarkably accurate for basic personality traits, but they're also heavily influenced by unconscious biases and social conditioning. This means you can trigger positive first impressions by understanding what signals the brain is looking for. The first element of powerful first impressions is physical presence. Before you say a single word, people are evaluating your posture movement and spatial awareness. Confident people take up appropriate space, move with purpose, and maintain steady, controlled movements. They don't fidget, rush, or make themselves smaller. Their physical presence communicates that they belong in the space and have every right to be there. Physical presence starts with your posture. Stand or sit with your spine straight, shoulders back, and head level. This isn't about being rigid, it's about being aligned and grounded. When your posture is strong and stable, it triggers unconscious associations with competence, leadership, and emotional control. When your posture is weak, collapsed, or fidgety, it signals insecurity, nervousness, and low confidence. Your movement patterns also communicate volumes about your internal state. Confident people move deliberately and smoothly. They don't rush unless there's a real urgency, and they don't move slowly unless they're being intentional about creating a specific effect. Their movements have purpose, direction, and control, which signals that they have control over themselves and their environment. The second element is facial expression and eye contact. Your face is the most expressive part of your body, and people read it constantly for emotional information. Confident communicators maintain relaxed, alert facial expressions that show they're engaged but not overly eager. They make appropriate eye contact that shows interest and attention without being aggressive or invasive. Eye contact patterns are particularly important for establishing authority and connection. Strong eye contact signals confidence, honesty, and engagement, but too much becomes aggressive and uncomfortable. The optimal pattern is to maintain eye contact for 3 to 5 second intervals while speaking and 4 to 6 second intervals while listening. This creates a sense of connection without triggering discomfort or dominance battles. Your facial expressions should match your internal emotional state and your intended message. If you're nervous but trying to appear confident, the mismatch will be obvious and undermine your credibility. This is why emotional regulation is so crucial for powerful communication. You need to genuinely feel calm and confident, not just try to fake it. The third element is vocal quality and tone. Your voice carries enormous amounts of information about your emotional state, confidence level, and social status. Within seconds of hearing you speak, people make judgments about your competence, authority, and trustworthiness based purely on how you sound. Confident voices have certain characteristics. They're well supported by breath, which creates a full, rich tone. They have controlled pace, which shows thoughtfulness and intentionality. They have appropriate volume, which demonstrates awareness of the space and audience. They have clear articulation, which signals education and attention to detail. And they have varied intonation, which keeps people engaged and interested. Many people unconsciously sabotage their vocal authority by speaking too quietly, which signals insecurity, speaking too quickly, which signals nervousness, or using uptalk, which makes statements sound like questions. These vocal patterns immediately lower your perceived status and competence, regardless of what you're actually saying. The fourth element is your opening words and energy. The first thing you say sets the tone for the entire conversation, and people remember it disproportionately due to the primacy effect. Confident communicators open with clear, purposeful statements that establish their authority and set the direction for the discussion. Weak openings include apologizing for speaking, interrupting, or taking up time. They include uncertain phrases like, "I'm not sure if this is right," but, or, "I hope you don't mind me saying." They include excessive pleasantries or small talk that wastes time and dilutes your message. These patterns immediately signal that you don't value your own time or opinions, which trains others to devalue them as well. Strong openings are direct, purposeful, and confident. They might include a clear statement of your purpose, an interesting observation that demonstrates insight, or a strategic question that engages the other person's thinking. The key is to lead the conversation from the first moment, rather than waiting for others to set the direction. The fifth element is emotional congruence. This means that your words, emotions, and body language all align and support the same message. When there's incongruence between these channels, people unconsciously sense that something is off and they become less trusting and less engaged. Emotional congruence requires genuine confidence and emotional regulation. You can't fake it effectively because micro-expressions, body language, and vocal qualities leak your true emotional state. This is why developing real confidence and emotional control is so much more effective than trying to use superficial techniques to appear confident. The neuroscience of first impressions reveals that people are constantly evaluating you on multiple levels simultaneously. They're assessing your competence, your confidence, your trustworthiness, your status, and your intentions, all within the first few seconds of meeting you. By understanding how these assessments work, you can consciously influence them and create powerful, positive first impressions that open doors and create opportunities. Chapter 3. The Authority Matrix. How to command. Respect without being aggressive. Most people think authority comes from being loud, aggressive, or dominating, but real authority is the opposite. True authority is calm, controlled, and magnetic. It draws people in rather than pushing them away, and it creates respect rather than fear or resentment. Understanding the difference between authority and aggression is crucial because one builds your influence while the other destroys it. Authority is based on competence, confidence, and emotional control. When you have genuine authority, people naturally defer to your judgment, seek your opinions, and follow your lead. This happens because authority triggers unconscious respect and trust. People feel safe around authoritative individuals because they sense that these people have control over themselves and their environment. Aggression, on the other hand, is based on force, intimidation, and emotional reactivity. Aggressive people might get temporary compliance, but they don't get genuine respect or willing cooperation. Aggression actually signals weakness because it shows that you need to use force to get what you want rather than earning it through competence and character. The first element of natural authority is emotional regulation. Authoritative people remain calm and controlled even in stressful situations. They don't get defensive, angry, or flustered when challenged. This emotional stability signals strength, competence, and leadership capability. When others see that you can maintain your composure under pressure, they naturally view you as someone who can handle responsibility and make good decisions. Emotional regulation doesn't mean being emotionless or robotic. It means being able to choose your emotional responses rather than being controlled by them. Authoritative people feel emotions, but they process them internally before responding. This allows them to respond strategically rather than reactively, which leads to better outcomes and increased respect. The second element is intellectual confidence. This means having well thought out opinions based on solid reasoning and being able to articulate them clearly and persuasively. Intellectual confidence shows up in how you present ideas, defend positions, and engage with opposing viewpoints. You're not afraid of intellectual challenges because you've done the work to develop informed perspectives. Intellectual confidence is different from arrogance. Arrogant people think they know everything and dismiss other viewpoints without consideration. Intellectually confident people know what they know and acknowledge what they don't know. They're open to learning and changing their minds when presented with better information, but they don't waver on principles they've carefully considered. The third element is purposeful communication. Authoritative people communicate with clear intention behind every word. They don't speak just to fill silence or to be polite. When they contribute to conversations, they add genuine value through insights, questions, or information that moves the discussion forward. This purposefulness makes others pay attention because they know that when you speak, it's worth listening to. Purposeful communication also means being selective about when you speak. Authoritative people don't feel compelled to comment on everything or to prove their intelligence in every conversation. They speak when they have something meaningful to contribute and remain silent when they don't. This selectivity makes their words carry more weight when they do choose to speak. The fourth element is boundary setting. Authority requires clear boundaries about what you will and won't accept in terms of behavior, treatment, and communication. These boundaries aren't aggressive or punitive. They're simply clear statements about your standards and expectations. When people know where your boundaries are, they're more likely to respect them and you. Setting boundaries effectively requires calm consistency. You don't need to get angry or aggressive to enforce boundaries. You just need to be clear about consequences and follow through consistently. When someone crosses a boundary, you address it directly and matter-of-factly, without drama or emotional escalation. This shows that you take yourself seriously and expect others to do the same. The fifth element is competence demonstration. Real authority is ultimately based on proven ability to get results. People respect you when they see evidence that you know what you're doing and can deliver on your promises. This competence can be demonstrated through past achievements, current performance, or clear expertise in relevant areas. Competence demonstration isn't about bragging or showing off. It's about quietly and consistently proving your value through your actions and results. When people see that you consistently deliver high-quality work, meet deadlines, solve problems, and add value, they naturally begin to defer to your judgment and seek your input. The sixth element is strategic vulnerability. This might seem counterintuitive, but showing appropriate vulnerability actually strengthens authority rather than weakening it. Strategic vulnerability means being honest about limitations, acknowledging mistakes, and asking for help when needed. This shows confidence and emotional maturity rather than weakness. The key is that the vulnerability must be strategic and appropriate. Sharing every insecurity, doubt, or personal problem undermines authority, but acknowledging specific limitations or mistakes while taking responsibility for them actually increases trust and respect. It shows that you're honest, self-aware, and focused on results rather than protecting your ego. The seventh element is social calibration. Authoritative people understand social dynamics and adjust their communication style to fit the situation without compromising their core principles. They know when to be more formal or casual, when to be direct or diplomatic, when to lead or support. This social intelligence allows them to maintain authority across different contexts and relationships. Social calibration requires observing and understanding the unspoken rules of different social environments. What works in a boardroom might not work at a family dinner. What's appropriate with peers might not be appropriate with subordinates or superiors. Authoritative people navigate these differences skillfully while maintaining their authentic personality and values. Authority is not about dominating others or getting your way through force. It's about earning respect through competence, character, and emotional maturity. When you develop genuine authority, people naturally want to follow your lead, seek your advice, and respect your decisions. This creates influence that lasts and relationships that strengthen over time rather than deteriorating due to resentment or fear. Chapter 4. The Persuasion Operating System. How to change minds without manipulation. Persuasion is not manipulation. Manipulation involves deceiving or coercing people to act against their best interests for your benefit. Persuasion involves helping people make decisions that are genuinely good for them, while also achieving your legitimate objectives. Understanding this distinction is crucial because ethical persuasion creates lasting relationships and results, while manipulation destroys trust and backfires over time. The foundation of ethical persuasion is understanding how people actually make decisions. Most people think decision-making is a logical, rational process, but neuroscience reveals that it's primarily emotional. People make decisions based on feelings, then use logic to justify those decisions to themselves and others. This means that effective persuasion must engage emotions first, then provide logical support for the emotional decision. It means understanding what people genuinely care about and helping them see how your proposal connects to their real values, priorities, and desires. When persuasion aligns with someone's authentic interests and emotions, it feels natural and beneficial rather than pushy or manipulative. The first principle of the persuasion operating system is identifying the other person's core motivations. Everyone has primary drivers that guide their decisions. These might include security, achievement recognition, autonomy, connection, growth, or contribution. Before attempting to persuade someone, you need to understand what really motivates them, not what you think should motivate them. You can identify motivations through careful observation and strategic questions. What topics make them light up with enthusiasm? What concerns keep them awake at night? What achievements are they most proud of? What fears do they try to avoid? What values do they consistently defend? Understanding these deeper motivations allows you to frame your proposals in ways that genuinely resonate with their priorities. The second principle is establishing genuine rapport and trust. People are only persuaded by people they like, trust, and respect. This rapport can't be faked through superficial techniques like mirroring body language or using someone's name repeatedly. Real rapport comes from authentic interest in the other person, demonstrated competence, and consistent reliability. Building rapport requires shifting your focus from what you want to get to what you can give. When you genuinely care about helping someone solve their problems or achieve their goals, they sense this authenticity and become more open to your influence. This doesn't mean being selfless. It means finding genuine alignment between your interests and theirs. The third principle is strategic storytelling. Facts tell, but stories sell. Because stories engage emotions, create vivid mental pictures, and make abstract concepts concrete and memorable. Instead of presenting dry information or logical arguments, you embed your key points in compelling narratives that help people visualize and feel the benefits of your proposal. Effective persuasion stories have specific elements. They feature relatable characters facing similar challenges to your audience. They include specific sensory details that make the story vivid and memorable. They show clear cause and effect relationships between actions and outcomes. They end with results that your audience wants to achieve. And they position your proposal as the key factor that enabled the positive outcome. The fourth principle is addressing resistance proactively. Every person has reasons for potentially saying no to your proposal, and ignoring these concerns doesn't make them go away. Skilled persuaders identify likely objections and address them before they're raised. This shows that you understand the other person's perspective and have thoughtfully considered their concerns. Addressing resistance isn't about overpowering objections with stronger arguments. It's about acknowledging legitimate concerns and providing genuine solutions or alternatives. Sometimes this means modifying your proposal to better meet their needs. Sometimes it means providing additional information or assurances. Sometimes it means accepting that your proposal isn't right for them at this time. The fifth principle is creating urgency without pressure. People postpone decisions when there's no compelling reason to act. Now, effective persuasion includes legitimate reasons why acting sooner is better than acting later. This might include limited availability, time-sensitive opportunities, or increasing costs or difficulties over time. The key is that the urgency must be real, not artificial. Creating false deadlines or scarcity backfires when people discover the deception. But highlighting genuine time-sensitive factors helps people overcome natural procrastination and indecision. You're not pressuring them, you're helping them avoid the negative consequences of unnecessary delay. The sixth principle is making it easy to say yes. Even when people want to accept your proposal, they might hesitate if the process seems complicated, risky, or overwhelming. Effective persuasion removes as many barriers as possible and makes the next step clear, simple, and low risk. This might involve breaking a large commitment into smaller steps, providing guarantees or trial periods, reducing upfront costs, or handling administrative details yourself. The easier you make it for people to move forward, the more likely they are to do so, even when they're genuinely interested in your proposal. The seventh principle is confirming commitment and next steps. Many persuasion attempts fail not because people aren't convinced, but because the conversation ends without clear agreement about what happens next. Once someone agrees to your proposal, you need to confirm their commitment and establish specific next steps with timelines and responsibilities. This confirmation serves multiple purposes. It ensures that you both understand what was agreed to. It creates psychological commitment through the consistency principle. It prevents the agreement from being forgotten or deprioritized. And it maintains momentum by establishing immediate action steps rather than leaving everything for later. The persuasion operating system works because it aligns with how people naturally think, feel, and make decisions. It doesn't try to override their judgment or manipulate their emotions. Instead, it helps them make good decisions by providing relevant information, addressing legitimate concerns, and making it easy to take action that serves their interests while also achieving your objectives. Chapter 5. Strategic silence. The power of what you don't say. Most people are afraid of silence in conversations. They feel compelled to fill every pause with words, even when they have nothing meaningful to say. This fear of silence destroys their communication power because it makes them appear nervous, anxious, and lacking in confidence. Learning to use silence strategically is one of the most powerful communication skills you can develop. Silence is not the absence of communication, it's a different form of communication. Strategic silence can convey confidence, authority, thoughtfulness, and control. It can create space for others to reveal important information. It can add weight and impact to your words. It can diffuse tension and create connections. And it can give you time to think before you respond instead of reacting impulsively. The first type of strategic silence is the confidence pause. This is a brief silence before you speak that shows you're choosing your words carefully rather than blurting out the first thing that comes to mind. Confident people are comfortable with this pause because they're not desperate to prove themselves or fill every moment with chatter. The confidence pause works because it signals thoughtfulness and intentionality. When you pause before speaking, people unconsciously assume that what you're about to say is worth waiting for. This makes them pay closer attention to your words words and gives your message more impact. It also gives you time to organize your
Organized
thoughts and
thoughts.
choose the
It's
most effective
the
way
effective
to
way of
communicate
communication
your
your
point. The
point.
second type is the emphasis pause. This is a strategic silence after making an important point that allows it to sink in before moving on.
Right.
Most people rush from point to point without giving their audience time to process important information. The emphasis pause ensures that your key messages are absorbed and remembered rather than lost in a stream of continuous talking. Emphasis pauses are particularly powerful
Powerful.
after making bold
Bold
statements,
statement.
asking important questions, or delivering surprising information. The silence creates mental space for the other person to consider what you've said, rather than immediately thinking about their response. This increases the likelihood that your message will influence their thinking and decision making. The third type is the invitation silence. This is a longer pause that creates space for the other person to contribute to the conversation. Many people monopolize conversations by talking continuously, which prevents them from learning important information about the other person's thoughts, feelings, and motivations. Invitation silences encourage others to share more than they initially intended. Invitation silences work because most people feel compelled to fill conversational gaps. When you create space through silence, others will often reveal information they wouldn't share if you kept talking. This information can be invaluable for understanding their perspectives, building rapport, and identifying opportunities for connection or persuasion. The fourth type is the processing pause. This is a silence that gives you time to think before responding to difficult questions or challenging statements. Instead of feeling pressured to respond immediately, you can take a moment to consider your options and choose the most strategic response. This prevents you from saying something you'll regret and helps you maintain control of the conversation. Processing pauses are especially important when dealing with confrontation, criticism, or high pressure situations. The natural tendency is to defend yourself immediately, but this often leads to reactive responses that escalate conflict or undermine your position. A strategic pause allows you to respond thoughtfully rather than emotionally, which leads to better outcomes. The fifth type is the tension pause. This is a silence that allows uncomfortable emotions or difficult topics to exist without immediately trying to fix them or move past them. Many people are so uncomfortable with tension that they rush to resolve it even when sitting with the discomfort would be more productive. Tension pauses can be powerful in negotiations, difficult conversations, or when addressing performance issues. Instead of immediately offering solutions or reassurances, you allow the other person to feel the full weight of the situation. This often motivates them to take responsibility or propose solutions themselves rather than waiting for you to fix their problems. The sixth type is the reflection silence. This is a pause that gives both parties time to consider what has been discussed before moving to the next topic or making decisions. Reflection silences prevent rushed decisions and ensure that important conversations receive adequate consideration. Reflection silences are particularly valuable at the end of important discussions or before making significant commitments. They allow everyone involved to mentally review what has been covered, identify any remaining questions or concerns, and confirm their understanding before proceeding. Using silence effectively requires overcoming your discomfort with conversational gaps. Most people find silence awkward because they interpret it as a sign that the conversation isn't going well. But strategic silence actually improves conversation quality. By creating space for deeper thinking, more genuine sharing, and more thoughtful responses. The key to comfortable silence silence is shifting your mindset from feeling responsible for constant entertainment to being confident in your presence. You don't need to fill every moment with words to add value to a conversation. Sometimes the most valuable thing you can contribute is attentive listening and thoughtful pauses that encourage others to share more deeply. Practicing strategic silence also requires paying attention to your own emotional state. If you're anxious, nervous, or insecure, you'll feel more pressure to fill silence with chatter. But if you're calm, confident, and centered, you'll be comfortable with conversational pauses and able to use them strategically. The power of silence lies in its rarity. In a world where most people talk too much and listen too little, those who master strategic silence stand out as unusually thoughtful, confident, and compelling communicators. They're remembered not just for what they say, but for how they make others feel heard, understood, and respected through their attentive listening and strategic pauses. Chapter 6: The Social Calibration Code, Reading Rooms, and Adapting Your Communication Style. The most sophisticated communicators possess an almost supernatural ability to read social situations and adapt their communication style accordingly. They seem to know exactly what to say, how to say it, and when to remain silent in any environment. This isn't magic or natural talent. It's a learnable skill called social calibration.
Oh my
And
God.
it's the difference between being effective in one context versus being powerful in every context. Social calibration is the ability to accurately assess the unwritten rules of any social environment and adjust your communication to work within those rules while still achieving your objectives. Every social situation has invisible dynamics, power structures, cultural norms, and emotional undercurrents that determine what kind of communication will be effective and what will backfire. Most people fail at social calibration because they use the same communication approach in every situation. They speak to their boss the same way they speak to their friends. They use the same tone in formal meetings that they use in casual conversations. They apply the same strategies in high-tension situations that they use in relaxed environments. This lack of adaptation severely limits their influence and often creates unnecessary conflict or resistance. The first element of social calibration is situational awareness. Before you open your mouth, you need to assess the environment you're entering. What is the formal hierarchy, and who holds decision-making power? What is the emotional climate, and are people stressed, relaxed, anxious, or excited? What are the cultural norms, and what behaviors are expected versus prohibited? What is the time pressure, and how much depth versus efficiency is required? Situational awareness requires observing multiple channels simultaneously. You're reading body language, listening to tone patterns, noting who speaks and who remains silent, watching how people position themselves physically, and identifying who others defer to or seek approval from. This information tells you how to position yourself and what communication style will be most effective. The second element is audience analysis. Different people respond to different types of communication, and effective calibration requires understanding your specific audience. Are they analytical people who want facts and logic, or relational people who want connection and emotion? Are they detail-oriented people who need comprehensive information, or big-picture people who want summary and vision? Are they risk-averse people who need reassurance, or risk-tolerant people who respond to bold proposals? You can assess audience preferences through several indicators. Their professional background often predicts their communication preferences. Engineers and analysts typically prefer logical, structured presentations, while sales and marketing people often respond better to emotional storytelling. Their questions reveal whether they think in details or concepts, whether they focus on problems or opportunities, whether they prioritize safety or growth. The third element is power dynamics assessment. Every social situation has formal and informal power structures that determine how influence flows. Formal power comes from titles, positions, and official authority. Informal power comes from relationships, expertise, social status, and personal charisma. Effective communication requires understanding both types of power and adapting your approach accordingly. When communicating with people who have higher formal power, you typically need to be more structured, respectful, and results-focused. You should prepare thoroughly present information clearly and respect their time constraints. When communicating with people who have informal power, you might need to be more relational, collaborative, and patient in building consensus. Understanding power dynamics also helps you avoid accidentally threatening or undermining powerful people. Some communication styles that work well with peers can backfire with superiors if they seem disrespectful or presumptuous. Other styles that work with subordinates can appear weak or indecisive with peers or superiors. The fourth element is cultural competence.
Becoming a monthly donor. With your regular support, you're not just responsible.
Every organization, industry, and social group has unique cultural norms that affect communication effectiveness. These cultures determine what topics are safe versus dangerous, what communication styles are respected versus rejected, and what behaviors signal competence versus incompetence. Corporate cultures vary dramatically in their communication preferences. Some value direct confrontational debate, while others prioritize harmony and consensus. Some reward bold risk-taking, while others punish any deviation from established procedures. Some encourage informal, casual interaction, while others maintain strict professional boundaries. Misreading these cultural signals can destroy your credibility and influence. Cultural competence requires observing how successful people in that environment communicate and modeling their effective patterns while avoiding their mistakes. You're looking for the unwritten rules that determine who gets promoted, who gets listened to, and who gets marginalized based on their communication style. The fifth element is emotional intelligence calibration. Every social situation has an emotional tone that affects how people receive and process communication. High-stress environments require different approaches than relaxed environments. Celebratory situations call for different energy than problem-solving situations. Crisis moments demand different strategies than routine interactions. Emotional calibration means matching your energy and tone to the situational requirements while still maintaining your authentic personality. If everyone is stressed and urgent, you can't be slow and casual without appearing disconnected. If everyone is formal and serious, you can't be playful and irreverent without seeming inappropriate. But you also can't completely suppress your personality, or you'll appear fake and untrustworthy. The sixth element is strategic flexibility. Social calibration isn't about becoming a chameleon who has no consistent identity. It's about being strategically flexible in your communication approach while maintaining your core values and objectives. You're adapting your methods, not your principles, your style, not your substance, your presentation, not your purpose. Strategic flexibility requires having multiple communication approaches in your repertoire. You need to be able to communicate analytically when the situation requires logic emotionally, when connection is needed assertively, when leadership is required, and collaboratively when consensus building is important. This range allows you to be effective across diverse situations and relationships. The seventh element is real-time adjustment. Social calibration isn't just about reading a situation correctly at the beginning, it's about continuously monitoring feedback and adjusting your approach as the situation evolves. People's moods change, power dynamics shift, and new information emerges that requires communication strategy modifications. Real-time adjustment requires paying attention to micro-feedback signals. Are people leaning in or leaning back? Are they asking questions or remaining silent? Are they making eye contact or looking away? Are they nodding in agreement or showing signs of confusion or disagreement? This feedback tells you whether your current approach is working or needs modification. Effective real-time adjustment also requires having the emotional flexibility to change course without losing confidence or composure. Many people get locked into communication approaches even when they're clearly not working because changing feels like admitting failure. But strategic adaptation is a sign of social intelligence, not weakness. Mastering social calibration transforms you from someone who is effective in limited contexts to someone who can succeed in any environment. You become the person others rely on for important conversations, difficult negotiations, and high-stakes presentations, because you have the rare ability to read situations accurately and communicate in ways that achieve results while maintaining relationships. Chapter 7. The confidence algorithm building unshakable self-assurance in any situation. Confidence is not a personality trait you're born with. It's a skill you can systematically develop. Most people think confidence comes from success, but the reality is reversed. Confidence creates success, not the other way around. When you understand how confidence actually works, you can build it deliberately and maintain it consistently, regardless of external circumstances. The foundation of unshakable confidence is understanding the difference between outcome-based confidence and process-based confidence. Outcome-based confidence depends on external results and other people's approval. When things go well, you feel confident. When they don't, you feel insecure. This type of confidence is fragile and unreliable because you can't control outcomes or other people's reactions. Process-based confidence comes from trusting your ability to handle whatever happens. It's based on your preparation, competence, and emotional resilience rather than specific results. When you have process-based confidence, you remain steady and self-assured, even when outcomes are uncertain or disappointing, because you know you have the skills and character to navigate any situation effectively. The first element of the confidence algorithm is competence building. Real confidence is rooted in real ability, and you can't fake competence for very long without being exposed. This means that building confidence requires continuously developing your knowledge, skills, and expertise in areas that matter to your goals and responsibilities. Competence building isn't just about technical skills. It also includes communication skills, emotional regulation, leadership abilities, problem-solving capabilities, and social intelligence. The broader your competence base, the more confident you can be in diverse situations because you know you have the tools to add value and achieve results. The key to competence building is deliberate practice focused on your specific weaknesses and challenges. Most people practice what they're already good at because it feels comfortable and rewarding. But confidence comes from knowing you can handle difficult situations, which requires practicing the skills you'll need when things go wrong. The second element is preparation mastery. Confidence grows when you know you've prepared thoroughly for whatever challenges you might face. This preparation includes researching relevant information, anticipating potential problems, developing contingency plans, and rehearsing important communications or presentations. Preparation mastery goes beyond surface level planning to include mental and emotional preparation. You visualize successful outcomes, but also prepare mentally for potential setbacks or difficulties. You practice staying calm and focused under pressure. You develop quick decision-making processes for unexpected situations. This comprehensive preparation gives you confidence that you can handle anything that comes up. The third element is evidence accumulation. Your brain builds confidence by accumulating evidence that you can succeed in challenging situations. Every time you handle a difficult conversation, navigate a complex problem, or achieve a meaningful goal, you add to your evidence bank of personal competence. Most people don't pay attention to their successes and accomplishments, so they don't get the confidence benefits from their achievements. They focus on failures and problems while dismissing or minimizing their successes. Building confidence requires deliberately noting and remembering evidence of your capabilities and achievements. You can accelerate evidence accumulation by setting progressive challenges that stretch your abilities without overwhelming them. Start with situations that are slightly outside your comfort zone and gradually increase the difficulty as your confidence grows. Each success builds evidence that you can handle increasingly challenging situations. The fourth element is self-talk optimization. Your internal dialogue has enormous impact on your confidence levels because your brain believes what you tell it repeatedly. Most people have negative self-talk patterns that undermine their confidence through constant self-criticism, doubt, and catastrophic thinking. Optimizing self-talk doesn't mean unrealistic positive thinking or denying genuine challenges. It means developing accurate, realistic self-assessment that acknowledges both your strengths and areas for improvement without being unnecessarily harsh or defeatist. You speak to yourself the way you would speak to a valued colleague, objective, supportive, and constructive. Effective self-talk focuses on process rather than outcome, on effort rather than ability, and on learning rather than proving. Instead of telling yourself you have to be perfect, you remind yourself that you're capable of handling challenges and learning from mistakes. Instead of fearing failure, you frame difficulties as opportunities to demonstrate resilience and problem-solving skills. The fifth element is posture and physiology management. Your physical state directly affects your emotional and mental state through the mind-body connection. When you maintain confident posture, move with purpose, and control your breathing, you actually feel more confident, not just appear more confident. Confident physiology includes standing or sitting with proper alignment, moving deliberately rather than frantically making appropriate eye contact, and using controlled gestures that support your communication. These physical practices don't just project confidence to others, they generate genuine feelings of confidence within yourself. Breathing patterns are particularly important for confidence management. Shallow, rapid breathing triggers anxiety and nervousness, while deep, controlled breathing promotes calm confidence. Learning to regulate your breathing gives you a powerful tool for managing your emotional state in any situation. The sixth element is comfort zone expansion. Confidence grows through experience with challenging situations, and you can't build that experience by staying in your comfort zone. This requires deliberately seeking out situations that stretch your abilities and force you to develop new skills and capabilities. Comfort zone expansion should be systematic and progressive, rather than reckless and overwhelming. You want to challenge yourself enough to grow, but not so much that you become overwhelmed and lose confidence. The goal is to gradually expand your comfort zone so that situations that once seemed impossible become routine. Each time you successfully navigate a situation outside your previous comfort zone, you expand your confidence for similar situations in the future. Over time, this process builds deep, unshakable confidence because you have extensive evidence that you can adapt and succeed in diverse, challenging circumstances. The seventh element is identity alignment. The most powerful confidence comes from alignment between your actions and your authentic identity. When you're trying to be someone you're not or acting in ways that contradict your values, you feel insecure and uncertain regardless of your external success. Identity aligned confidence means knowing who you are, what you stand for, and what you're capable of achieving. It means being comfortable with your strengths and limitations without feeling the need to pretend or compensate. It means acting in ways that reflect your genuine personality and values, rather than trying to meet other people's expectations. This type of confidence is unshakable because it doesn't depend on external validation or approval. You know who you are, and you're comfortable with that identity regardless of what others think. This inner security gives you the freedom to communicate authentically and take appropriate risks without being paralyzed by fear of rejection or failure. The confidence algorithm works because it builds genuine self-assurance based on real competence, preparation, evidence, and self-knowledge, rather than superficial techniques or positive thinking. When you systematically develop these elements, you create confidence that withstands pressure, performs under stress, and grows stronger through challenges rather than being diminished by them. Chapter 8: Advanced Influence Techniques. The psychology of getting what you want without force. Influence is not about overpowering people or manipulating them into compliance. It's about understanding human psychology and creating conditions where people naturally want to cooperate with you. The most powerful influence techniques work by aligning with how people already think, feel, and make decisions, rather than fighting against their natural tendencies. The foundation of ethical influence is understanding that people don't resist ideas, they create themselves. When you can guide people to discover conclusions, solutions, or decisions on their own, they feel ownership and commitment rather than resentment or resistance. This requires shifting from telling people what to think to helping them think more effectively about their own situations and goals. The first advanced influence technique is assumption reframing. Most people make unconscious assumptions about what's possible, normal, or appropriate in any given situation. These assumptions create invisible boundaries that limit their thinking and decision making. By skillfully challenging or reframing these assumptions, you can expand their perception of available options. Assumption reframing works by introducing new perspectives that highlight the arbitrary nature of current limitations. You might ask questions like, what if we didn't have to follow the usual process? Or what would be possible if budget wasn't a constraint? Or how would this look if we were starting from scratch? These questions help people break free from limiting assumptions and consider new possibilities. The key to effective assumption reframing is making it feel natural and collaborative rather than pushy or argumentative. You're not attacking their current thinking, you're helping them expand it. You present alternative perspectives as interesting possibilities to explore, rather than as corrections to their faulty reasoning. The second technique is social proof orchestration. People look to others for guidance about what to think, feel, and do, especially in uncertain situations. By strategically highlighting relevant examples of others who have made similar decisions, you can influence people's perception of what's normal, reasonable, or beneficial. Social proof orchestration requires careful selection of relevant examples that match the person's situation, values, and concerns. The examples should come from people they respect or identify with, and demonstrate outcomes they want to achieve. Generic